Welcome, everyone, to the Habitat for Humanity International Women's Day event. We are thrilled to have you here joining us today. This is a special day. It's a special day to celebrate the women of this community, the women of the world, and the impact that we have and potentially have on changing this world in a positive way. We're thrilled to be able to share this with you. Today, we have a couple of speakers. You're going to have a wonderful lunch. We'll talk about ways that you can continue to make an impact in this community, but I want to formally welcome you to this event. What I want to do now is bring up our first speaker, but I first want to introduce you to this friend of ours. Lita Davis is a new friend to Habitat. She came to us several months ago with a story about her life and an opportunity that she had to receive an award that we thought might be important to know about. And we began a conversation, and Lita has brought to our organization new friends, an energy, and support for what's going on in Habitat. It's been a wonderful partnership. Lita will be able to tell you a little bit about her background, so I didn't want to say too much before Lita gets up here. But Lita Davis, come and join us.
Not working.
I know.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm so happy to be here today to celebrate International Women's Day. Thank you, Diane Shoemaker, and thank you, Amy Vandel, for inviting me. I worked for the UN in New York and UNESCO in Paris, and I continue my connection with the UN through the U.S. National Committee for UN Women. This UN Women is an agency that addresses the enormous problems of women around the globe, like gender equality, domestic violence, and raising the consciousness of men to support women in attaining their goals. The United Nations celebrated International Women's Year in 1975. In 1977, the UN General Assembly proclaimed March 8 as International Women's Day. It's appropriate to celebrate this day with Habitat for Humanity in view of their very successful Women Build program. The UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, quote, "Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for health and well-being, including food, clothing, housing, medical care, and necessary social services," unquote. This declaration changes lives when people realize that these are global rights, not entitlements. Many of you are volunteers in some capacity or other. I was 55 when I became a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, West Africa. Senegal is on the westernmost point of Africa. I spent 3 years in a remote village with no electricity or running water, in a delta surrounded by the most beautiful people I've ever known. I helped women's groups develop small enterprises, like souvenir stands selling handmade dolls and artifacts to French tourists, trekking around 7 villages to assist them. I helped with ecotourism, people building their own small campements on the beach to compete with the French hotels. We had a tie-dye workshop, and I worked with a women's group that collected mussels and shrimp. We were right in a delta with a lot of mangroves. They smoked them and carried them to the nearest city to sell to restaurants. These women typically put no value on their labor, nor did they figure their bush taxi fare in their profit margin. We formed a delegation to visit the restaurants they sold to, and we convinced them that if they wanted their shellfish, they'd have to come down and get them. And they did. and the women saved a whole day's labor and car fare transporting them. Here are a few pictures from Senegal. That's the house in which I lived, a little cement block house. And as I said, no electricity, no running water. I had candles, I had a well in the back of the house. This was the kitchen. I hung food in calabashes like that so the rats wouldn't get to them. So 2 months after my 3 years in Senegal, I returned home and I went to Haiti to become administrator of Hospital Albert Schweitzer. It was founded in 1956 by Larimer Mellon, a scion of the illustrious oil and banking Mellon family. But Larimer Mellon decided he wanted to do something more meaningful with his life, and he followed the example of Albert Schweitzer, whom he visited in Gabon, Africa. Schweitzer advised him that if he wanted to do what he was doing, go and find the poorest place imaginable in this hemisphere. It was in the middle of Haiti that he built his hospital with his wife, Gwen Grant Mellon. The hospital evolved into clinics, dispensaries, and many community development projects in the Artibonite Valley. I spent 5 years there and wrote about my experiences in my book, In the Valley of Atibon, which is on sale for you, if you're interested. Pictures of Haiti. This is Gwen and Larimer Mellon when they first founded the hospital. Don't they look like movie stars? As a matter of fact, Mrs. Mellon was in her late 80s when I went to work there, and she just completed a book. I said, you know, somebody should make a movie of your life, and you know who should star you? Meryl Streep. Look at her. And she says, who's Meryl Streep? Well, she didn't get around much in Haiti. After the 2010 earthquake in Haiti, Habitat built 255 houses. 4,000 families received transitional shelters, and more than 350 houses were repaired and rehabilitated. Over 4,000 Haitian citizens were trained in construction techniques, financial literacy, disaster risk reduction, and business development. After 5 years, I retired in 2002 and came back to Florida, where I joined 2 returned Peace Corps volunteer groups, one in Miami and one here on the Gulf Coast. We concentrate on Peace Corps' third goal, which is bringing the world home to Americans. Its first goal is helping in developing countries whatever that government tells us they need. Second is acting as ambassadors, American ambassadors, to our country of service, presenting the best face possible of America to the people we serve. And third is bringing the world back to America. So as part of the third goal, I review Peace Corps authors' books on a website called Peace Corps Worldwide. I speak to colleges and organizations such as Habitat for Humanity. And our group is involved in community projects, such as a children's garden at the Selby Library, highway cleanup, a celebration of service award given to Project Light in Bradenton last year, and this year to WSLR Radio. You know what that is, Fogartyville in Sarasota. In April, we're going to produce a World Heritage Day display at the same site as Embracing Our Differences. You know, that beautiful display of flags by children from all over the world. We're going to be there talking about Peace Corps. All Peace Corps volunteers will be representing their country of service, and I think it's going to be a wonderful time. In the midst of all these activities, I got a phone call. It was evening. I picked up the phone and a voice said, did you know you're nominated for the Lillian Carter Award? And I said, you know, I did hear something to that effect. And the voice said, well, you won it. I was so elated, I dare say as elated as the day that Peace Corps called me and told me I'd been accepted. My husband can tell you he was scraping me off the ceiling. So The Lillian Carter Award was established by President Carter in honor of his mother, Lillian, who went to India with Peace Corps when she was 68 years old. The award is given to a Peace Corps volunteer who joined after the age of 55 and who, after returning from service, promotes the goals of Peace Corps. Did I tell you I joined when I was 55? Okay. So my husband and I went to the Carter Center in Atlanta last May. The award program went on for 2 hours. It included the executive director of the Atlanta Federal Reserve, Atlanta Area RPCV, Returned Peace Corps Volunteer Group, president, Peace Corps Acting Director Sheila Crowley, National Peace Corps Association president, Jason Carter, the president's grandson, and to my everlasting awe, President Carter himself. By the way, the Carters were awarded the Habitat Humanitarian Award last year. In his speech, President Carter told stories about his mother, which you'll find in a wonderful book he wrote about her entitled A Remarkable Mother. With his signature smile, he recounted the story of the family forgetting Miss Lillian at home the day of his inauguration. After 15 minutes, they missed her and drove back to Plains to get her. She was very miffed. After cajoling her into coming, she snapped, "We're late through no fault of mine. But if the damn plane won't wait for us, then what's the point in being president?" She hated to be interviewed. When reporters asked if she was proud of her son, she always replied, "Which one?" When Jody Powell interviewed her, he asked, "Is it true that your son never lied?" "Well, maybe a little white lie every now and then." "What do you mean?" he said. "Well, like when I met you at the door and said you looked nice and I was glad to see you." She traveled around the world on behalf of the president and felt that if she had had a little more time, she could have solved the problem between the Protestants in Ireland and the Catholics. She had always been committed to civil rights at home and human rights abroad. President Carter became a little bit emotional more than once while talking about his mother. I was next on the program, and I'd like to share with you some excerpts from my acceptance speech. I was humbled to receive such a great honor. When I thought of all the unsung heroes I know who dedicate themselves to humanitarian work, who never seek or gain recognition. People like my husband, Robert Davis, who is devoted to serving homeless people, especially children, and who is a great supporter of Habitat for Humanity, among other worthy causes. And he takes care of me, no small job. Miss Lillian and I had a few things in common. She left her family to serve as a Peace Corps volunteer in India. I left my 2 sons. We both missed our children. My heart sank at the prospect of not seeing them for 2 years. But it soared each morning when Senegalese children clambered past my house on their way to school, or dropped in to drum on plastic buckets, or just sat around ever curious about what l'Américaine was up to. In the Indian village of Vikhroli, Miss Lillian found it difficult to learn Marathi or Hindi. Learning a new language at a certain age becomes a tad difficult. Fortunately, she could often fall back on English. So did I struggle with Wolof and Serer, but I spoke French at least, the colonial language of Senegal. She published a book, Away from Home, Letters to My Family. I kept a diary on which I based my book, Roller Skating in the Desert. As a nurse, Miss Lillian assisted President Indira Gandhi's family planning program. though she preferred to treat villagers' common illnesses. The caste system in India bothered her. I carried bags of condoms around and counseled young and not so young people about HIV/AIDS prevention, though I preferred to teach English or even build latrines or develop small businesses with women's groups. The people I lived among viewed me as a grandmother. They called me Yai and respected me accordingly. They found it difficult, though, to understand why a woman my age would travel to a strange land and live alone instead of surrounding herself with children to care for her. The women also found it bizarre in a Muslim polygamous society that I did not have a husband, so they regularly sought one out for me. I managed to turn their matchmaking into comedy by observing that my erstwhile suitor was too old — I was older than any of them — or didn't have enough cows. Many years after her service, when President Carter was in office, Miss Lillian represented our government at the funeral of Indian President Fakhruddin. She took the opportunity to return to her village of Vikhroli. 10,000 people waited to celebrate her. "I never knew you thought so much of me," she said. "I was happier walking here, sometimes barefoot, than I am now coming in the president's plane." When I returned to Senegal in 2001, there weren't 10,000 people waiting to welcome me, but there were many who were happy to see me. Several of the projects we had started together had endured. When I returned again in 2005, while they were glad to see their old Yai, they were actually quite surprised that I was still alive. Why would we want to join Peace Corps later in our lives? I think that as we grow older, we start thinking more about we than me. I wanted to do something meaningful before it was too late. I treasure this award in Miss Lillian's honor, and thank you all for the opportunity to share with you some of the most marvelous moments of my life.
I'm going to get to share with you my experience, my international experience that I just had very recently. And Amy's going to show you a few photos from it. So this past October, I had the privilege of participating in the Habitat for Humanity International Global Mission Trip. HFHI, Habitat International, works in 40 countries around the world, and in 2018, we'll be offering 50 trips to countries like Guatemala, Brazil, Kenya, and India. Last year, I chose to take a trip to Guatemala, and the title of that program was Women and Weaving. I shared the 9-day trip with 11 women and Tom. Tom joined us. I was particularly interested in this trip because it included the opportunity to visit a women-owned weaving cooperative in addition to assisting families with housing needs. Our visit to the co-op required taking a small boat across the lake to the hilly village, where we spent the time visiting the shop where dozens or more women work and display their items. The women shared their vision, which was to enable younger and older women to both work together to learn from each other, not only business, but also the art of weaving. Their purpose was to empower each woman with tools to be a financial contributor to their family. Everyone works really hard in Guatemala. As we drove through the cities each day to work with families in the highlands, I witnessed both women and men walking long distances with heavy loads on their heads and on their backs, up the hills from their homes, onto buses, which they would then take into larger cities to spend the entire day selling their wares. And in the evening, then we would repeat that whole process in reverse every single day. Everywhere we went, we met individuals with gentle spirits who were always humble and grateful for what they had and were working hard for their families. You know, life in Guatemala isn't easy. Millions of Guatemalan families are living on less than $1.25 a day. The living conditions are tough. 95% of the water is contaminated, and 52% of the Guatemalans suffer from respiratory diseases. But fortunately, Habitat has some healthy home solutions that are having a big impact on families in Guatemala. The bulk of our trip was to help families build smokeless stoves. I think we'll have a picture of that. There we go. Each day we met a new family who had prepared the mud bricks that would then be used to construct a stove. Our stove would replace the open fire pits in the kitchens, which had over time had blackened the walls and the ceilings of their kitchen. And you can imagine what that was doing to their lungs and to the small children that they carried on their backs. At the start of the day, chopping down the bricks I was chopping down bricks to the right size with a machete. Picture it. Then working alongside my teammates and a mason, we'd create a very simple yet efficiently designed brick stove held together with mortar filled with sand, attaching an exhaust pipe, and adding a stove top. See if we can. Yeah? I think we have one. Do we have one more, Amy, if it's just a finished stove? There we go. And at the end of the 2 weeks after it dried, each family would then find the tile or the decorative pieces to add that special touch to it. The cost of this critical addition to each home was $100, and it resulted in burning less wood, which saved them money and time. But most importantly, it would save lives. By the end of the week, each of our 3 teams had built 4 stoves, helping 12 families improve the health of their homes. At the finish of a work day, each day we would gather with the women of the home and her family and hold a small ceremony to present to the family the burners of their new stove. Each woman we worked with and celebrated with was emotional, and needless to say, I was too. But they were grateful and they were filled with pride for the new addition to their home. The lives of these women and those of her family were certainly being changed, and so was I. So I came home and I was reminded of many things, but one of the things I was reminded of was that even though we were wearing different clothing and we were speaking different languages and we lived in a very different housing situation, that as women we seek the same for ourselves as individuals and for our families and for our communities. And it left me to remember that together we can unite our voices and our power as women throughout the world to create change not only in our homes and in our communities, but in the world as a whole. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Vandell, and I'm the Resource Development Manager, and I think I talked to most of you or replied to your emails about what you want for lunch, and I hope it was good. I'm thrilled to be here to make an introduction to our next speaker, who I've gotten to know a couple different ways. She came to our Women Build kickoff, that was over a year and a half ago, and we learned about her, and we have since been kind of following what she's doing and decided that we were going to add something to this luncheon to recognize a Habitat family member that's done something kind of above and beyond the average, and Heather definitely has done that. Heather Baskin has owned her Habitat home for 18 years. She raised her 3 sons, Markel, Kelvin, and Azavian there since they were little boys. And this is a picture of her dedication in Palmetto in 2000. When she first thought about applying to Habitat, she was unsure. Could she do all the things to make it happen? To help her through the process, she had a mentor, Steve Rosskamp, somebody that many people know in this community, very well known. He was there to coach and encourage her, and she kept going. While working full-time as a VPK teacher and raising her 3 sons, she worked on 9 houses with other Habitat families. Where she lives in Palmetto, 5 Habitat houses were being built at the same time. She worked on all of them and 4 more. Her home was dedicated August 27, 2000. And here's the program. And she's kept that and lots of memorabilia about her event. It was a special day of celebration. Her minister, Reverend Williams, blessed the occasion, and her father, Constantine Baskin, sang. Her Habitat neighbors, all except one, are still in their homes too. She's proud of her sons, who are all successful, respectful young men. 2 have children of their own. She particularly likes this picture, I think it's the one right before that, of her youngest son, Xavion, who received a scholarship to go to New Mexico Military Institute on a football scholarship, I believe. And he's up for another scholarship now. While she continues to work full-time at her church teaching, she also has pursued her own dream and artistic expression as a baker. She is the proprietor of Bee's Bakery and has been a certified and licensed baker, making specialty cakes for the last 3 years. She's very busy and is known throughout the community for her creations. And we could look at some of those too. While, yes, I knew that I was going to hear that. I do believe we will see her on Shark Tank or Cake Boss eventually. Heather is recognized today for her accomplishments after becoming a Habitat homeowner, for being a shining example of what is possible with a hand up and a stable, affordable home. Steve Roskamp wishes he could have been here today, but he sent this message. It's hard to believe that Ricky, as she's also known as, Ricky's house was dedicated 18 years ago. I remember her dedication and routinely think of her and how she's doing when I drive through Palmetto and by her house. She had a great spirit about her as she worked for her Habitat house. She was always positive, kind, and had a beautiful smile. Please pass along my congratulations to her long-term homeownership and the receipt of this award. And she will have her house paid off in less than 3 years. Please welcome Heather Baskins.
Good afternoon. Well, she really pretty much summed it up in a nutshell of my life. But it's an honor to be here. I was honored to get the phone call. You just never know when God is getting ready to bless you or to honor you. So I'm grateful to be here. As she mentioned, I've been in my house for 18 years. It was the best decision that I could have ever made. And my kids have grown up. They've gone off to be, successful young men. I have the youngest one, which is 21. He's off in college, and he's getting ready to transfer to another college. And then my middle son, which is 24, he is an executive chef at a nursing facility. And then my oldest one is in Nevada, raising his family, doing really well. So God has really blessed me. When I got ready to move, make that decision if I wanted to be a Habitat homeowner, at one point I was living in an apartment, and I kept telling my coworker, I said, I would really love to have a house. And she said, why don't you try Habitat? And I said, well, really didn't know anything about it. And I went out one day and I did the application and did everything that I needed to do. And I just got tired of my kids not having anywhere to play. The playground was far away in the apartment complex. And so I did it, and I did what I needed to do to accomplish to get the house. And like she said, it's been 18 years, and in less than 3 years, it'll be paid off. So thank God for that. But it's been a wonderful journey. And since being there, I've been in childcare for about 20 years, getting those little ones ready, getting them ready for school, and now God has blessed me to have my own business. So I do work full-time. I work in the daytime. I work with little ones, playing with them, and then I come home and I get to be a kid and play all over again. As you've seen some of my work, I do everything by hand. Everything's from scratch. I just absolutely love it. It's just like playing with toys all over again. I have several groups online on Facebook where I teach ladies and men to do exactly what I do. So it's been a wonderful experience. So just want to, kind of, piggyback on what she said. But thank you all for allowing me to be here. I did bring samples for you guys to try. So now that you've had lunch, I hope I have enough. But my famous chocolate chip cookies. So I brought them so you guys can try them.
Where can we find you online?
Right now, I advertise through Facebook, so I do have a business page on Facebook, but everything is on my business card. So I have my business card attached to your little samples. Thank you. Thank you. So going back to the business as well, even if I do everything, whether it's weddings, for businesses, for companies that are office meetings, whatever, I do everything. I do complete parties. And so it doesn't have to be a party. If you just want something, it's late night, you want a snack, you can call Bee's Bakery. But thank you guys for having me here. Thank you.
We have something for you.
Oh.
Roger's going to present it to you.
Okay, all right. Aww.
Careful, that's loose on there. And you just say a few words there.
So we are pleased to recognize her accomplishments and how Habitat has been a part of that. And we present her with this plaque. It says, in honor of Heather Baskin, and it's presented on this International Women's Day, March 8th, 1918. For you and all your fellow homeowners, thank you. Blessings to you and to all your compatriots.
Right there. There we go. All right. No, that may not be so good because of the screen. We'll take another one. There we go.
What a wonderful way to celebrate International Women's Day with the success of one of our homeowners and all the work that Heather's doing. You are a wonderful example to all of us of the hard work that it takes to create the life that you want, that you have supported your family the way you have, that you've found a passion, and she's followed her passion. We can all learn from that. So congratulations, Heather. We're glad to have you. Well, that's sort of wrapping up our International Women's Day. What I want to encourage you to do as individuals, as part of families and in organizations, to find a way that you and your voice can make a difference in your community and in this world. That's what this day is all about, that coming together as women, that we have a special gifts and talents, a special power that we can share compassion, empathy, unique creative perspectives, and that it behooves us as women in this world today to make use of those gifts to make it the world that we want it to be. So again, thank you for contributing to Habitat today and in the many ways that you do support our missions. There is lots of ways to be involved with Habitat. This is one of the many ways that you can be involved. There's certainly the opportunity to volunteer. We do have here today some of our volunteers, women volunteers and men volunteers, and we want to thank them for what they do. You can support us through events. You can support us through the restores that we have. There are ways that you can be involved. Thank you so much for supporting this important mission and for doing what you do in the community to help support women as a whole. Enjoy your day. Oh, apparently we have a raffle.